Number 6, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for State-Owned Enterprises and asks, will the government suspend its asset sale program until a referendum on the issue has been held, given the Clerk of the House has certified that 327,000 New Zealanders, or more than 10% of voters, have signed a petition triggering that referendum?
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr. Speaker, no.
Supplementary.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does he agree with John Key's comments of 25 June 2008 in support of the public's right to have citizen-initiated referenda, like this one, where John Key said, quote, "I actually have respect for the New Zealand public's right to express their views." And he went on to say that a Prime Minister who opposes that is, quote, "arrogantly out of touch with New Zealanders."
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr. Speaker, of course I would have to agree with the Prime Minister. I'm not able, I always do, but I'm not able to necessarily confirm the quote that the member has given to the House.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can he confirm that if the government proceeds with its privatisation program before the referendum is held, this will mark the first time a government has actively implemented a policy that is the subject of a valid citizen-initiated referendum petition without giving the public a chance to vote in the referendum?
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr. Speaker, the government has already begun to implement its policy with respect to the mixed ownership model. We have already sold 49% of Mighty River Power. As a result of that, we have $1.7 billion of cash, which is earmarked for important public services like the Christchurch Hospital. I would draw the member's attention to the fact that even though 87% of New Zealanders voted in the anti-smacking referendum opposed to that legislation, that member opposite said that people should ignore that referendum.
Order. Order. Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Is he aware that, contrary to that referendum, which actually happened after the policy was implemented, that this government has an opportunity to suspend the sale of Meridian Energy and the other energy companies while waiting for the people of New Zealand to give their opinion of the issue of asset sales through a referendum which has now been initiated?
Honourable Tony Ryle.
Mr. Speaker, I don't agree with that member's statements because this government announced in January 2011 its proposals around the mixed ownership model. They were then detailed in the budget of 2011, which I think was in May. It was then the centrepiece of the 2011 general election. The Leader of the Opposition at the time described it as a referendum on asset sales in New Zealand, and the National Party received by far the largest number of votes of any party. The Labour Party received the lowest number of votes that it had ever received in a general election in recent times, and it's clear that this government has the support from that election to implement its policy. If we weren't implementing our promises, the opposition would be complaining.
Supplementary question, Dr. Russel Norman.
Well, with regard to the Minister's answer, which addresses the question of mandate, I believe, is he aware that 51% of voters in the last election voted for parties that are opposed to the asset sale program, and that on every poll that's been done on the issue since, more than 60% of New Zealand voters have opposed the asset sale program?
Order. I'm going to ask the member to repeat that question because I had trouble hearing.
Pardon me. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of the Minister's answer, which goes to the question of mandate, is the Minister aware that at the last election 51% of votes cast were cast in favour of parties that opposed asset sales, and since that election every poll has shown that more than 60% of New Zealanders are opposed to his asset sale program, and hence why won't he test his mandate by putting it to a referendum?
Honourable Tony Russel.
Mr Speaker, actually what matters is that more people voted to enable National to form a government than to enable any other single party to form a government. And what the member needs to know is that once you are in government, you are expected to honour the pledges of your campaign. We had one of the highest results in our party's history, and we are proceeding to implement our policies. And they're important because we need that money in order to invest in important social assets like the Christchurch Hospital rebuilds, important schools, the 21st Century Schooling Project. That money is vital to that social investment and actually of greater benefit to New Zealanders.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the government accept the Green Party's offer, along with Labor from earlier in question time, to allow the referendum to be delayed until the next election in exchange for the government suspending the asset sales until we have that debate at the next election alongside the referendum where the people of New Zealand will get to decide whether the asset sales proceeds?
Honourable Tony Russel.
No, because the government wants to proceed with its program because it's fundamental to two important areas. One is it helps New Zealand control debt, and secondly, it provides us with the resources to invest in important social infrastructure, Christchurch Hospital, roading projects, the 21st Century Schools, the Justice Precinct in Christchurch. These are important investments that will benefit New Zealanders, and that's why we're determined to keep on with our program.
Supplementary question, Dr Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Is the Minister aware of Treasury's projection that the government's operating balance is worse off by about $100 million a year as a result of asset sales? And hence, why is the government determined to go ahead with these asset sales in spite of the blowout in the cost, well over $100 million, the ongoing loss of net profits, despite overwhelming public opposition to it, and despite the failure of the mighty river float, which attracted less than half of your predicted, or rather the Minister's predicted, retail investors?
Honourable Tony Russel.
Mr Speaker, I'd really dismiss that member's characterisation of a number of issues. The Mighty River Power sale's actually been quite successful. The government has $1.7 billion of cash, 113,000 shareholders, despite the economic sabotage of the member's opposite. And the important reason why we are doing this is that it not only helps control debt, it provides us with the resources to invest in important social infrastructure like the Christchurch Hospital. If that member is opposed to the Christchurch Hospital rebuild, I invite him to go to Christchurch and tell them that. And I invite him to also say why he's opposed to investing $1 billion in 21st century schools. That's of real benefit to New Zealand families.
Question number 7, Honourable Peter Dunn.
Mr Speaker, my question is to the Associate Minister of